Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the testifiers. Just a couple of thoughts before I ask Professor Locklear a couple of questions. You know, I think it's really important to assume good faith here, and what I've heard is a kind of concerning series of accusations about bad faith. And I'm trying to go back to 1888 and imagine that the Lumbee people, whatever they were calling themselves, whatever language they were using at the time, says, you know what, why don't we pretend we're a tribe and petition the federal government? If this is a conspiracy, it is long-standing, kind of odd, counterintuitive conspiracy. The more likely explanation is what the Department of Interior said about 90 years ago, 100 years ago, when they explicitly said, we're not going to recognize this tribe because the census is too large, because we can't afford to absorb the cost of delivering services. And I think that is, by the way, I think that's a valid concern for congressional appropriators, right? If we are to recognize Lumbee, the rolls just increased. The total number of people in Indian country went up, which means IHS, BIE, BIA, and all of those services are going to have to increase by the percentage that the rolls increase. And so that's a real issue. It's just not a reason not to grant recognition. And the reason I'm animated about this is that I don't know whether Native Hawaiians are ever going to come back to this Congress and seek recognition. But I remember, I was not here, but I remember when Danny Akaka, chairman of this committee, tried to get recognition. And the arguments were, do you know how many people that is? Do you know how much that's going to cost? And then, well, they're not Indians. And so I don't take it as personally as Senator Mullen, but I do take it personally. And I'll just say one other thing. You can go through the administrative process or you can not. But the Constitution vests not just the Congress, but this committee with this authority. So it may be that you think we should have gone, or these folks should have gone through the administrative process, fair enough. But that is not a meaningful obstacle to consideration of Lumbee recognition. So, Professor Locklear, I just want to give you an opportunity to, again, respectfully, rebut some of the claims made by the opponents of this legislation. Three things. Lumbee has used different names for themselves, that they have no language, and that they do not descend from a historic tribe. Could you address those three assertions?
With pleasure, Senator, and thank you for the question. First of all, with regard to the name and why it came about, the Lumbee children in 1884 were not able to go to school. Our children could not read or write. We were not allowed to attend either white or African-American schools. In 1885, our leaders sought recognition from the state of North Carolina for the purpose of establishing schools for our children. We prevailed with the assistance of a Mr. McMillan in the House, who deemed himself to be an amateur historian at the time. Mr. McMillan chose the name Croatan for our people. But in his legislation, he did important things. He established a government-to-government relationship. He allowed the creation of an independent school system run by the tribe, limited to tribal children, and taught by members of the tribe. To my knowledge, no other tribe in the United States can claim that history. So beginning in 1885, we controlled our own school system until the 1970s, when a federal district court ruled that the state of North Carolina must desegregate its school system. We thought we were exempt from that because, after all, we are an Indian tribe. But the judge told our parents, you must bus your children because this is a racial classification because you are not federally recognized.
Okay, and to the language?
Yes. There is no requirement in either Supreme Court or other federal court authority or the acknowledgement regulations that our opponents so warmly embrace that require the presence of a language.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things, it seems to me, they are historical facts, and they happened because of United States federal government policy. We lost language because of federal policy. People lost a land base because United States federal government policy. And then it is not surprising that the Department of Interior repeatedly rejected the claims of the Lumbee people, because the Department of Interior, I mean, the idea that we should accept the precedent of the Department of Interior from generations back, when I think there is unanimous bipartisan agreement that the whole purpose of this committee is to reverse all of those policies, termination and assimilation. And to use that as a proof point against recognition, I find to be not compelling. Now, there are criteria that we're to use to determine whether or not to recognize Lumbee. But the idea that, well, DOI didn't do it in 1930, or they don't have their own language, well, there are, and frankly, we work a fair amount on language revitalization, and there are a lot of tribes that have very few native speakers left or none. And so none of this is disqualifying because, frankly, many, many Native people across the country have experienced that. I did not expect to get so exercised, but I appreciate your testimony.
If I may I offer
With
one
the chair's
final,
permission.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. One final fact on the language point that I think is important. Vine Deloria, when he testified in 1988, made note of the fact that he had not only personal knowledge of the Lumbee tribe, but also family knowledge of the Lumbee tribe, because his aunt, Deloria, had gone down to the community, who was a noted linguist, for the purpose of studying the remnants that remained of tribal languages. And she made note in 1940 that those remnants existed, and her purpose was to establish a dictionary. She did not complete that work because she was not able to get funding. They were not interested in our community to do so.